What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and we are finally here. The 111th Grey Cup game, the championship game of the Canadian Football League in 2024. It's been a long and winding road to get here, 21 weeks of a regular season, 3 weeks of a playoff, and we are finally going to crown a champion for the 2024 season. That game will be contested between the East Division champions, the Toronto Argonauts, and the West Division champion, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The fifth straight appearance in the Grey Cup game for the Bombers. And let me get this out of the way right away. A lot of people rag on dynasties, you know what I mean? There's an old saying that the only thing someone loves more than a dynasty is watching a dynasty fall. I kind of hope this Bombers dynasty never falls. Obviously it will, but there's been something special about this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team over the past, 5-6 years, where they've really built their program into a juggernaut, and 5 straight appearances in the championship game speaks to just that. And the Argos are no slouches on the other side. This has been a very successful string of multiple seasons here for the Argos. A Grey Cup championship a couple of years ago, an appearance in the East Final last year, and they're back in the Grey Cup game again in 2024. I certainly set the bar high after the East and West semifinals and was probably never going to duplicate my performance from those 2 games. Was actually a bit underwater for the East and West finals overall. I only went 2-4 picking those 2 games. 1-1 straight up, 1-1 against the spread, and 1-1 on the totals, and actually missed both spreads. For the postseason, that has me 3-1 straight up, 2-2 against the spread, and 3-1 on the totals for an 8-4 mark across the playoffs as a whole. And that 8-4 mark means for the entirety of the season, I sit at 142, 111, and 2. I think I'll take that. So, here we go. Grey Cup 111 matchup, Toronto Argos, Winnipeg Blue Bombers. This game being played, I believe, in BC. And look, it's worth looking at this point. How did these 2 teams get here from the start of the season all the way up to now? And honestly, it's been a pair of 2 pretty compelling stories for how these teams have gotten to this game specifically. We'll start out east with the Argos. Obviously, their aspirations were high this season. They had an appearance in the East Final last year, 2 years ago, coming off of a Grey Cup championship in Grey Cup 109. They played the first 9 games of this season without their star starting quarterback, Chad Kelly, who rightfully served a suspension for the first half of the season. So look, they went into the beginning of this season with a combination of Nick Arbuckle and Cameron Dukes at quarterback, and the plan is basically try to hang on for dear life. And I feel like they did exactly that. That combination of Arbuckle and Dukes won 5 of the Argos' first 9 games, including 3 wins over playoff teams. Kelly comes back, plays basically every game down the stretch. The Argos finished the season with a 10-8 record, the number 2 seed in the East Division. They toppled the Ottawa REDBLACKS 58-38 in the East semifinal, and then upset the Montreal Alouettes last week 30-28 in Montreal in the East Final. The 5th straight win over the Alouettes in Montreal. But of course, the Argos did not leave that game unscathed. Chad Kelly suffering a horrific leg injury in that East Final, late in that East Final, in fact, meaning the QB1 for the Toronto Argos for the Grey Cup matchup is gonna be Nick Arbuckle, and that makes all the difference in the world. People can say what they want to say about Chad Kelly personally, maybe professionally, whatever you want to say. I don't disagree with any of those criticisms, but if you ask me from a football perspective, who would I rather have as my starting quarterback in a Grey Cup game? There's Chad Kelly and there's Nick Arbuckle. With the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, as I mentioned, this is their 5th consecutive appearance in the Grey Cup game, including, of course, it goes all the way back to 2019. We skip over, the COVID canceled season, but this was anything other than, oh, ho-hum, business as usual for the Blue Bombers. They're just automatically going back to the Grey Cup. No, this season was different in Winnipeg. The Bombers won just 2 of their first 6 games to open the season in 2024, and that included losses against the likes of Ottawa and Calgary. No disrespect to those teams, but those are 2 teams that a dynasty that's been as dominant as the Blue Bombers, that's 2 teams that the Bombers should beat. But at the beginning of the season, Winnipeg very much did not look like Winnipeg at all, and especially at the quarterback position. It didn't just look like Zach Collaros had lost a step. Collaros looked cooked at the beginning of the season. But of course, as is the case with great teams, you can only keep great teams down for so long. Beginning August 1st, you could really see where the coaching staff put the hammer down, threw down the gauntlet for this team. And starting August 1st, the Bombers won 8 straight games, 9 of their last 10 to close out the season, finishing the number 1 seed in the West. The Bombers then hosted the West Final last week, a 38-22 victory over Saskatchewan at home. And in years in the future, when they're looking for a cute little catchphrase to describe this season for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, it has to be the Brady season. Brady Oliveira with just an incredible season at the running back position for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Not only nominated for Most Outstanding Canadian, but nominated for Most Outstanding Player. I'll give these 2 teams the same or a similar treatment as I did in the previous 2 rounds. Their head-to-head matchup since the beginning of the 2022 season. They've matched up 5 times. The Toronto Argos have won 3 of those games. But in those 5 matchups, scoring about as razor thin as it could possibly get, a 20-19 advantage for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. This matchup between Toronto and Winnipeg, a rematch of Grey Cup 109 just 2 years ago, which was a 24-23 victory in favor of the Toronto Argos. They were underdogs going into that game as well, if memory serves me correctly. The Argos have not only the most Grey Cup victories all time at 18, but have an incredible 75% win percentage in the Grey Cup championship. 18-6 in that championship game. Look, it is an absolute shame that we are probably going to get robbed of the best version of this game. Like, there's no getting around it that the Chad Kelly injury looms like a massive dark cloud over what we're ultimately, I think, going to see on the field on Sunday. And again, I don't mean to totally rag on Nick Arbuckle, but like we're talking about 2 different calibers of quarterback. That's all that it is. And the parlay of a Toronto Argos win in this game just got a heck of a lot longer than it would have with Chad Kelly under center. I think you're looking at like Nick Arbuckle probably needs to play his best game as a pro. Nick Arbuckle has to play mistake-free football. 100%. They also need Winnipeg to take a pretty decent step regressing towards what they were earlier in the season. The Bombers team that has been on the field over the last 10, 11 weeks has been nearly unbeatable. Now, the Argos have gotten them a couple of times this year. A couple of those losses are Toronto wins. With Nick Arbuckle under center, it just makes it exceptionally difficult. And I think the Argos defense has to pitch an absolute gem. So again, the parlay keeps getting longer for what needs to hit in order for the Argos to win this game. You can probably tell which way I'm going. I think the parlay's too long to hit. I'm going with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to win Grey Cup 111, become the champions of the CFL in 2024. I'm going to take the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to beat Toronto. Now, against the spread, the Argos are taking 10.5 points. So Vegas has obviously like wildly shifted in the direction of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And I can understand it because, again, that's how good the Bombers have been. But you can't deny at this point that there's something almost inexplicably special about the Toronto Argos in the Grey Cup game. So while I'm going to take Winnipeg to win, I can't lay 10.5 points. These are the 2 best teams of this season. So like 10.5 points, double digits in a championship game, I just don't see it. So I'm going to take Winnipeg to win, but I'm hedging my bets. Give me that plus 10.5 on the Toronto Argos. Total in the game set at 49.5 points. I think I like the under here. These two teams play in such low scoring games, and it's not just the average. If you look at like the bulk data over the last 5-6 matchups, it's been pretty darn low scoring games. So 49.5 points, it's almost a 50. I know there's been a lot of scoring in the playoffs. I just don't see it in this particular matchup. So give me an under on that 49.5 point total. By a final score of 26-20, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will win Grey Cup 111. So there you have it, folks. That's my pick. Winnipeg 26-20 over the Toronto Argos. Got a couple of bonus picks for you. Grey Cup MVP as well as Grey Cup Most Valuable Canadian. We'll start with the Most Valuable Canadian. It's going to be on Winnipeg's side, but interestingly enough, I don't think it's going to be Brady Oliveira. He's had an incredible season up to this point. The Argos have been very good against the run all year long. I'm going to give it to Winnipeg Blue Bombers defensive back, Tyrell Ford. Second in the CFL, I believe, in interceptions this year. I think Tyrell Ford has himself an incredible game on the defensive side. I think he's the most valuable Canadian in this game. And in terms of the Grey Cup MVP, why not go with the guy that had a hat trick of touchdowns in the West Final? I am going with Bombers wide receiver Kenny Lawler. I think he gets into the end zone twice in this game, has triple digits, probably catches 8, 9, 10 balls in this game. He has a virtuoso performance. Kenny Lawler is my Grey Cup MVP. Tyrell Ford is my Grey Cup Most Valuable Canadian. And the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are my Grey Cup 111 champion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as happens every season, we come to the end of our fellowship. The sixth season of my CFL football pick show is now coming to an end. Other than, keen-eared listeners may remember this, I will be doing a watch-along of Grey Cup 111 on Sunday. Obviously, as I mentioned, I do not have the rights to stream the game itself. However, I'm going to be live on my YouTube channel, reacting to the game in real time. Please feel free to join me in the chat, react, talk about the game, talk about the season, talk about whatever you want surrounding CFL football. I'm going to be live watching the game, live reacting to the game, and I would love it if you would join me while I do that. That's going to be on Sunday, but until Sunday and until the 2025 season, that's it for me. Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Thank you once again for arguably my most successful season talking about the CFL, doing this show in terms of viewership, in terms of interaction. You guys have a hunger, a fever for the CFL. I love it. I could not appreciate it more. It drives me to continue doing this and to continue giving you better picks and better content and just generally getting better at doing this. And I love it. I love doing this and I love you. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for all of your support this season. We'll see you on Sunday for the Grey Cup. It's going to be a good one.